Hi, I'm John Lemons, and welcome to Tennessee Valley Church. Today, we're at the Roundhouse in downtown Huntsville, built in the mid-1800s. And just a few decades after that, in the late 1800s, Vincent van Gogh burst onto the scene in Europe. Over a brief period of just 10 years, from the age of 27 to 37, he created more than 2,000 artworks. His influence is undeniable, with several of his paintings breaking records for the highest prices ever paid at the time of their sale. Today, Van Gogh is celebrated by art critics as one of the most significant artists in history. Van Gogh and others like him represent something universal in the human spirit: the aspiration for greatness, for excellence, for a lasting impact. They embody the kind of success that so many of us long for. But what happens when that kind of success doesn't materialize? What happens when you put in the effort, but greatness slips through your fingers? If you're an adult, take a moment to reflect. Where did you think you'd be by now? What dreams never materialized for you? What has happened that you never thought would happen? We often reflect on where we are versus where we thought we'd be. That's one of the things it means to be human. Our careers might not live up to our expectations, or perhaps they are, and they thrive while our relationships struggle. We may face challenges we never anticipate. Even young people might face this, not getting into the school of their choice or facing rejection from a romantic interest. These pressures often intensify in our social media-driven world, where comparisons are constant and success stories are idolized. What happens when our own story doesn't fit that mold? These feelings are especially common during middle age, often jokingly referred to as a midlife crisis. But the humor around it stems from a real place of shared experience for many people. In fact, the growing self-help industry and the explosion of personal development books are testament to the widespread nature of these feelings. We're searching for answers, for something that will bring fulfillment in a world that can feel so uncertain. Psychologists and sociologists have identified what is called the U-shaped curve of happiness. This theory, confirmed across different cultures and countries, suggests that happiness is often high in early adulthood, dips as we reach middle age, and then rises again later in life. It's people in their 40s and 50s that often find themselves at the bottom of this curve, grappling with feelings of dissatisfaction or questioning the trajectory of their lives. Conversely, substance use and depression peak not in your teens and 20s, but during this time in middle age. I say all this to say, if you feel like you are there, or have been there, or are headed there, you're not alone. Take comfort first in the fact that some of the people that we most admire in history were not widely celebrated in their own time. Though celebrated today, Van Gogh's story is considered tragic. Although some saw his brilliance, most of his work was rejected during his life. Realism dominated the art world, and his impressionist style, with its bright colors and bold strokes, was dismissed as unruly and undisciplined. He died poor, without knowing his future acclaim, having sold only a handful of his paintings, and not nearly at the prices they would go for a century and a half later. Like Van Gogh, the biblical prophet Jeremiah lived without seeing the impact of his work. Jeremiah, who was alive 600 years before the time of Christ, was born at a time when Israel's glory had long faded. Surely his dream was to see the temple in all its glory, but that dream never came true. About 300 years before the time of Jeremiah, Israel split into a northern and southern kingdom, and the tensions between the two simmered for over a century. The northern kingdom was conquered by Assyria in 722 BC, but those in the southern kingdom, known as Judah, they believed they were safe because of the grand temple in Jerusalem, a symbol of God's favor. And into this scene entered Jeremiah, consistently warning the people of Judah that their sin would lead to disaster. In Jeremiah 18, Jeremiah records how God tells him that the people he is sent to will not listen to him. Surely enough, throughout his ministry, Jeremiah was ignored, persecuted, and rejected by his own people. Biblical scholars note that there was no record of any positive response to Jeremiah's message. Roughly 45 years of faithful ministry with no visible impact. The end result is that Jeremiah sees the invading Babylonians lay siege to Jerusalem, destroy the temple, and exile the people of Judah. Jeremiah saw all of this unfold, his worst fears coming to pass. As he describes it, he mentions the destruction and the desecration that takes place in the valley of Hinnom, a real place outside of the temple in Jerusalem. The scene he describes in this valley, which later in the Greek language is called Gehenna, well, it ends up being one of the metaphors most used in Jesus' descriptions of hell. So we could say that at the siege of Jerusalem, Jeremiah is literally witnessing hell on earth. For a Judean like Jeremiah, steeped in the stories and the rich history of God's deliverance of the Israelites, this is their worst nightmare come true. In modern-day Jerusalem, the street that runs by where the temple once stood is called Al-Alam. In other words, we could call the destruction of the temple and the fall of Jerusalem, for those in Jeremiah's day, the nightmare on Al-Alam Street. Have you ever been there? Have you ever felt like the deck was stacked against you from the start? Like your dreams had died? Like your worst nightmare had come true? Jeremiah was there, yet he remained faithful. We all face moments when life feels like a nightmare. But Jeremiah's story teaches us that even when our efforts seem fruitless, we're not unseen by God. He lived out the calling that God gave him, despite the lack of visible results. And though Jeremiah might have felt like a failure, today we revere him as a towering figure of faith, his words recorded in Scripture and inspiring generations, and some of his verses being among the most recited in the Bible. His impact far exceeded what he could have imagined during his lifetime. When we come back, we'll talk about what we can do when we find ourselves amidst broken dreams and our worst nightmares come true.
Jesus, you're my heart's first love, and you've been holding on to me. You once were the air I breathe, so still my heart to remember. Jesus, I am wandering, but you're chasing after me. You once gave your life for me. Still my soul to remember. Still my soul to remember. Your oceans wave without thinking. Your mountains rise without knowing. Your rivers run without needing to know where they are going. Your lilies spinning so free. Oh, they're happy to be. So teach me this kind of humility. Teach me this kind of humility. Jesus, I am struggling. Lord, I'm struggling to see. I'm doubting your provision. Still my soul to remember that Jesus, you're my heart's first love. and you're leading me home through the fire and the flood to the place where I belong. To still my soul, to remember your oceans wave without thinking, your mountains rise without knowing, your rivers run without needing to know where they are going. Your lilies spinning so free, oh, they're happy to be. So teach me this kind of humility. Teach me this kind of humility. Jesus, you're my heart's first love.
Kelsey, thanks for hosting us here at Hope Horses in Coleman. You have a great place here. I'm honest, I had not heard about it, and I'm so sorry. So tell us, what is the story here? How did you get started?
So Hope Horses is a nonprofit organization. So we offer therapeutic riding lessons to children and adults with physical, cognitive, social, and emotional needs. Our organization actually started in 2014 by a man named David Pointer. His vision for Hope was to have a round pen and a porta potty. The Lord, as you can tell, exceeded our expectations on what He wanted to offer in Coleman. This is actually our 10-year anniversary, so it's a very exciting year for us. For our program, we're the only PATH center in North Alabama, and what PATH stands for us is Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship. So they govern our organization. But since we're the only one in North Alabama, we do reach a lot of students in Coleman, but we also reach up to Huntsville. We have around 25 students that come weekly to participate in our therapeutic riding program, which is max capacity for us.
You know, when we first got here today, you had a student that was riding. It was beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful to watch. So you have a relationship with a convent down here?
Yes. So our property is leased to us from the Benedictine Sisters of Coleman. They are huge supporters of Hope. They lease the property to us. And what's really unique for those that are watching, if they ever come out to our facility, our barn was built specifically for therapeutic riding. So what was really neat is they heard the vision, they heard the goal, and they said, all right, y'all take off, we support it. And we were able to build this barn to meet our need, what we thought was the need. But over the years, we've realized it's become so much more than our need, so what we see.
So what is it about a horse? What makes a horse therapeutic?
Yeah, my favorite thing to say and my favorite quote to think of whenever you look at the horse is there's nothing like the power of a horse. So, car dealerships and people that build cars are using that. They truly believe that there is nothing like the power of a horse, meaning there's a lot of movement in a horse. So for instance, I have a student that I teach that has CP. He cannot walk unassisted without his walker, or he uses his wheelchair. So in those moments that he gets on that ramp, he gets on his horse, he is able to walk, and his body is mimicking that movement that me and you do every time we walk. So, a horse, once the student gets on the horse, that just gives them the opportunity to build that self-confidence that they need, have self-confidence that maybe they don't get in a day-to-day basis. The horses, they don't see an individual with special needs, or they don't see a problem. That's one thing that we as our staff, believe that when we give a tour to a parent and we say, okay, but when your student walks in the door, the horse sees their teammate. They don't see, oh, that's a child with the special needs. There's a lot of benefits to the movement physically. The horses truly are just a very unique animal, and they give a lot of peace to our students, confidence, and a good friendship. So there's a lot of
And this is Spots or Spot?
Spots.
Spots is enjoying the interview.
Yes, he is. He's really wanting to talk, I think.
Well, I just having talked with you for a few minutes earlier, I know this is a calling for you. So what role does your faith How is this more than just a job for you?
I'll tell you a little backstory on how I started at Hope. So I was not here for the beginning part of Hope. I actually, I went to Auburn. I graduated in Human Development and Family Studies. My minor was in Nonprofit and Philanthropy Studies. Whenever I was at Auburn, I had called my parents because I volunteered at a center that was very similar to Hope. And I said, hey, they should start a center in Coleman. And my mom said, well, there's actually one starting up. And it was back, I was graduating in 2015. So Hope was, they were moving here and it was starting, to go up and start running. And I said, okay, well, that'll be good. Like whenever I get home, I'll just volunteer. So I come home and I start doing an internship for another nonprofit organization in Coleman. And I remember I was doing something and one of the ladies that I was working for called me and she said, hey, they're looking for a director and we've told them about you. And I said, that's nice, but there's no way that they will hire I think I was 21 at the time. There's no way, 21, 22-year-old. But thank you, I appreciate it. Well, the Lord just changed my whole thought process on that, because shortly after that phone call, I got a phone call to come in for an interview. I was extremely scared. Because I thought I had been in the nonprofit world in internships, but when you become the executive director, you're looking at a nonprofit from a different perspective. Within starting at the age of 22, 23, that was very scary. I learned quickly that nonprofit world, you can't do it on your own. There was a very unique time of struggle, it seemed like, that we could tell that, there was a need for Hope. And it was kind of figuring out those puzzle pieces to get it up and going, setting the secure foundation for Hope. And I remember I had a moment of time with the Lord, and He just told me, Kelsey, you're going to have to get out of my chair of control. That was one thing. And then He said, I don't call the equipped, I equip the called. And in that moment, I said, okay, so in all of this, I don't know how long this is going to how long Hope will last, but in those moments, I know that He's equipping me to do this job. And from that moment on, there were a lot of unique people, especially the staff that we have now, have really came in and set the foundation for Hope. We're all on the same page. Everyone loves the Lord, and that's truly what's making this engine run smoothly, is it's His. We're just the hands and feet.
Well, you and the folks that he agrees, I think. You and Hope, the people at Hope Horses are doing the Lord's work, and we appreciate you hosting us today.
Yeah, thank you.
If we find ourselves at the bottom of the U-shaped curve, amidst our broken dreams and our worst nightmares come true, wondering if our lives have made any difference at all, we can look to examples like Jeremiah. His faithfulness, despite his lack of visible success, it had a profound impact. We may not see the fruits of our labor in our lifetime, but that doesn't mean that we aren't making a difference. Jesus Himself acknowledged the value of small, unseen acts of faithfulness when He praised the widow who gave 2 small coins in the temple. Though her offering was tiny, it was given out of all that she had, making it more valuable than the grand gifts of others. When we are at the low points of life, questioning our contributions or wondering why things aren't working out the way that they should, if we keep our focus on us, on our disappointments, our broken dreams, and our manifested nightmares, then despair will be inevitable. Not living up to our expectations or the expectations of others that we place on ourselves, that will crush us. But if we can lean into the life that we have, live where we are, bloom where we are planted, and do so in faithfulness to where God has placed and called us, then we can be filled with hope and joy. The Apostle Paul shows us how this works. If we go back to the time of Jeremiah in Psalm 137, we have a record of the people of Judah shortly after they have been deported to Babylon. Their Babylonian captors ask them to sing one of the songs of Zion, and the Judean captives reply, "How can we sing in a foreign land?" But by the time of Paul, 600 years later, and shortly after the ministry of Jesus on earth, history has repeated itself. This time, it's not the Babylonians who are walking around Jerusalem uninvited, but the Romans. The tensions between the Romans and the Jews mount for decades until, towards the end of Paul's life, Jerusalem is staring down the barrel of another siege of the city. That eventually comes in the year 70 AD. The Romans surround the city and cut it off, destroying the temple again, this time for good. For people in Paul's day, this again was their worst nightmare come true. Another nightmare on Al-Alam Street. But something changed in Paul's life prior to that nightmare. Just a few decades before, on Al-Alam Street, another nightmare happened. Al-Alam is an Arabic name meaning way of pain, but you may know it by its Latin name, the Via Dolorosa, which means the way of suffering. Along that way, Jesus experienced the rejection of God, the hell on earth of separation from God, so that you and I wouldn't have to, so that we wouldn't look at the broken dreams in our lives or the worst nightmares come true and bemoan them like Jeremiah did, but find hope through them like Paul learns to do. We see Paul begin to put this in action in Acts. He's in jail. He's a captive. And he's not asking, how can I sing in a foreign land like the Judean captives do? But he's leading his fellow prisoners in song to the Lord. And when he's writing to the church in Rome, who are facing their own despair and discouragement in a foreign land, he writes not, curse the day that we're born, but he writes the words of Romans 8. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. What then shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? Who will bring any charge against those whom God has chosen? It is God who justifies. Who then is the one who condemns? No one. Christ Jesus, who died, more than that, who was raised to life, he is at the right hand of God and is also interceding for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? Should your broken dreams or your worst nightmares? Paul goes on to say, no, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, or anything else in all creation, and I might add, not your broken dreams and your worst nightmares, none of those will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Sometimes dreams can be fulfilled that are beyond our wildest imaginations. We see this a lot with landmarks. Can you imagine the original designers of the mosaic at First Baptist Church Huntsville seeing the impact that design has had on this area? The art, the memorabilia, and the just warm, fuzzy feelings that landmark has generated over the years would probably be incomprehensible to them. Or this building that I'm standing in today, the Roundhouse, here in downtown Huntsville. It was a train depot when it was originally built, and it served Huntsville well. But it's been repurposed. And perhaps you have been here like I have for a party or a fundraiser or a wedding. Can you imagine how proud the people who built it would be if they could see that it was still in use today and what it was in use for? I'm not a fan of the show Doctor Who, but my wife and my daughters are. Doctor Who, if you don't know, he's an alien who travels through space and time, helping humans at various moments in time. And occasionally, he will have interactions with people that we would consider historical figures. There's one episode I'm aware of where Doctor Who encounters Van Gogh, and along with some of his companions, they bring Van Gogh to a modern-day art exhibit where people are marveling over Van Gogh's work. Van Gogh's overwhelmed to see the response of people to his life work, a response that he never saw during his time on Earth. I can imagine a somewhat similar occurrence for Jeremiah, perhaps feeling like he never amounted to much, but being shown by God the impact of his life of faithfulness. And if we can maintain our faithfulness to God, no matter where he sends us and what he gives us in life, I suspect that day might arrive for you and me as well. Our present sufferings are not worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed in us. Can you imagine that? What would it be like to live faithfully to God in the life that you have, not the life that you wish you had? What impact might that have not only on you, but on the people around you and the people who come after you? What future setting might you be in, like Van Gogh or like Jeremiah, seeing the impact that you never knew you had on the lives of others? Can you imagine it after a life lived faithfully to God? Come on. Dream with me a little.
We hope you're enjoying TV Church, and we have a request for you. Would you consider hosting a group of friends in your home to watch TV Church together? You could serve snacks or have people bring elements of a meal to eat together. You could gather and watch live at 10 a.m. Sunday mornings on Way TV, or you could record it on TV and watch it together anytime. You could watch together from your computer at tvchurch.online anytime. You don't have to be some kind of expert. You just need to like people. And on top of that, you can invite people you like. People you like who are not part of a church family. We at TV Church would provide you suggested discussion questions, so you could watch together, discuss what you've seen, and then maybe eat together. This is just an effort to take the church with a capital C where people are. You could be a part of someone's significant, holistic, eternal transformation right there in your home. Would you be willing to consider being a host? Email Pastor Travis at travis@fbchsv.org. He will get you on the email list to receive discussion questions for the week. Would you consider that?